Bruce Lee wrote to many, many people other than Bob Baker, you know. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast number 185. This is the one about the other letters from the dragon. As you're logging in, if you guys would be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the broadcast. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, where click on the Rebel Gear link and you will see stuff like this. The 4 Tenets of Jeet Kune Do t-shirt, also available as a long sleeve, hoodie, no tank tops, coffee mug, and all that good stuff. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Okay, so last week, I think it was about a week ago, we were treated to the revelation that Bruce Lee may, towards the latter years of his life, may have had a prodigious drug habit. Different people reacted here on Facebook. Different people reacted differently to the news. Some summarily dismissed it as nobody's business. Some people dismissed it as, wow, a Hollywood guy in the 1970s did drugs. That's big news. And of course, there were people who wondered as to the veracity of the letters, whether or not they could be some kind of fabrication or something. Now, on last Wednesday's broadcast, I spent about 8 minutes talking about Bruce Lee and drugs. You might ask, why so short a time? It was because I, like many others, chose to not focus on the negativity surrounding the matter. Real people accept that Bruce Lee was a human being. Let's say a human being first and a martial artist second, meaning that he came onto the planet with built-in flaws, some of which we've always known about, and some which we maybe never knew about until last week. My martial arts colleague and fellow podcaster, Alex Richter, you guys know him as the Kung Fu Genius. Last Friday, he spent 33 minutes talking about and reading excerpts from several of the Bob Baker letters. And so I actually thank him for giving me the idea for what I'm doing today. So I thought I would do something similar, but of course, with a JKD Rebel twist. You know, before last week, if you wanted to read Bruce Lee letters, this is where you went, right? Letters of the Dragon, and then regards from the Dragon. This one's Oakland, this one's Seattle. That's where you went to read Bruce Lee letters. Today, I guess you go to whatever that website is and what have you. So what I thought I would do is read excerpts from some of this stuff. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if it's going to take a similar amount of like a half hour or whatever, but let's just get to it. So the first one is from 1958, and it's written to an unknown advisor. So it's November 1958. So this is before Bruce Lee has left for the United States. And he says pretty much, I think it's very rude to write to you so abruptly, particularly while I'm a stranger to you. So by this letter, I'm obliged to introduce myself to you. To begin with, my name is Li Xiaolong. My father, Li Hoi Chun, is a friend of your father, and I'm very grateful that your mother advised me to write this letter to you to ask you some advice. Because you're so much experienced in your subject, which you are now studying, and I too intend to study medicine or pharmacy in the future, I would like very much that you can solve my problems, and I hope that you don't find it troublesome. At present, I am a student of St. Francis. Y'all say Xavier. Do y'all say Xavier or Xavier? Anyhow, you know, SFX, right? I plan to come to the United States next year and finish high school. I intend to take medicine. As I am ignorant on that subject, can you please explain to me the qualifications of being a doctor or pharmacist step by step. Now, this is yours very truly, Bruce Lee, right? This, I think, is a wonderful example of a young, perhaps even somewhat naive Bruce Lee, who apparently at this point, right, well, obviously, had no idea what the future held for him in martial arts or in life. To me, he's doing the somewhat typical Asian thing of thinking about being a medical professional. The second one is 1960. So this is to Hawkins Chung, and it's posted from Seattle. And it says, "Dear Hawkins, I see that I am in your bad books through negligence in writing to you." Excuse me, and do not know how to apologize sufficiently for the neglect. I'm truly sorry about your sickness, but please do listen to me. It's no use to become nervous and fidgety. Remember that it won't help, but just de-improve the illness. Hawkins, I hope you will be better soon. Meanwhile, take it easy. I admit that it's good to practice Wing Chun. To be perfectly frank, I practice quite a lot on it nowadays. The wooden dummy has been shipped to me from Hong Kong already. But as for you, I advise you to quit it for time being and wait until you get better. I plan to go to university next year. I still don't know what I'm going to major in, but when I find out, I'll write to you again. Now I find, this is interesting, now I find that all those stuffs like Wing Chun, Cha-Cha are just for killing time and have a little fun out of it. And that study always comes first. Yes, that's right. Your own future depends on how well you have studied. I didn't do much for my spare time except studying and practicing Wing Chun. Now and then a South American would come and teach me some of his terrific fancy steps and have mine in return. Anyhow, so it goes on and on. This one is interesting also because it gives you a glimpse into a young Bruce Lee's idea about finances. And it also shows how important he considered continuous practice in Wing Chun as a means of keeping himself in good physical shape. But he appears to have considered martial arts and dancing to be somewhat distracting versus the important matter of academic study. The next two are to Ed Hart, who was a Seattle student. He says, "I'm sorry I didn't write till now. I was very busy straightening up my entrance requirements for the University of Washington. Now everything is all right. I'm being admitted for the spring quarter, which will start 27th of this month. Ed, we miss you very much here, especially I, for having lost a good writer. But of course, it's for our friendship that I really miss you most. Ed, do your best and save up some money and come back to us." Then he talks about demonstrations and he says, right now, everybody is practicing hard for it. I have 10 students so far and the club is taking shape. Maybe in 2 more months, it will be open to the public. I'm beginning to teach sparring to the students and I'm doing my best to train their kicking technique. Jesse Glover is still the outstanding one among the students, though he is not so limber in his legs, right? So again, insight into Bruce Lee's early years maturing as a martial arts instructor. He's growing his student base and looking to go public with his instruction. But he's already been presented with the dilemma of having students / close friends who are unable to pay for classes. So this is March of 1961. May of 1961, he says to the same Ed Hart, "We were talking about you yesterday when I received your letter. Is it true that you are planning to come back? I don't have the club anymore. In fact, we still owe $80 for it as everybody is out of a job and couldn't keep it up. Also, I have stopped teaching as I have to have a part-time job to tide me over my financial problem. The fellows are planning to pay me for lessons, which might be able to work out as a part-time job for me." So within 2 months, things had changed radically, and Bruce Lee was somewhat struggling once again financially. Okay, so now we move to part 2 of the book, which is it's titled "From Gung Fu to Green Hornet," and these are letters from a 2-year period of 1964 to 1966. This one, It's a 1962 letter to Pearl So. I think it's the longest letter of all in the whole book, and so therefore it's of great significance. But it might just take too long for me to read the whole thing. So I'll just read parts of it for you. So it says, this letter is hard to understand. It contains my dreams and my ways of thinking. As a whole, you can call it my way of life. It will be rather confusing as it's difficult to write down exactly how I feel. There are two ways of making a good living. One is the result of hard working, and the other, the result of imagination, requires work too, of course. It is a fact that labor and thrift produce a competence, but fortune, in the sense of wealth, is the reward of the man who can think of something that hasn't been thought of before. In every industry, in every profession, ideas are what America is looking for. Ideas have made America what she is, and one good idea will make a man what he wants to be. One part of my life is Kung Fu. This art influences me greatly in the formation of my character and ideas. I practice Kung Fu as a physical culture, a form of mental training, a method of self-defense, and a way of life. Okay, right, so the important part here is where he talks about Kung Fu is the best of all martial art, yet the Chinese derivatives of Judo and Karate, which are only basics of Kung Fu, are flourishing all over the US. This so happens because no one has heard of this supreme art. Also, there are no competent instructors. I believe my long years of practice back up my title to become the first instructor of this movement. So my aim, therefore, is to establish a first Kung Fu Institute that will later spread out all over the US. I have set a time limit of 10 to 15 years to complete the whole project, right? My reason in doing this is not the sole objective of making money. I like to let the world know about the greatness of this Chinese art. I enjoy teaching and helping people. I like to have a well-to-do home for my family. I like to originate something. And the last, but yet one of the most important, is because Kung Fu is part of myself. All right, and then he goes on to talk about great creative spiritual force that is greater than faith, greater than ambition. And when I read this, because there's a lot more, like I said, this is a really long letter. You can probably find it, if you've never seen it before, you can probably find it on the internet. But it's insight into Bruce Lee growing into the creative genius, the creative martial art genius that he became, and also taking a good look at how Kung Fu could be used as a means of supporting himself and his family, which he seems to be feeling is his destiny. And I surmise that he might have been reading, because of words, that some of the language that he used in this letter, I think he might have been reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich at the time, because the language here seems very similar. All right, moving on. There are several letters to William Chung in which Bruce Lee catches Chung up with what's going on in his life. There are also several letters to Taki Kimura and James Lee about training, and to George Lee about training equipment, right? Again, they provide insights into Bruce Lee's continued growth as a martial artist. One of them that I did make a note of is to, actually, it's excerpts from three of them to Taki Kimura. Apparently, they're talking about a guy in Seattle, and Bruce Lee says he's no sweat, as he doesn't even understand what rhythm, timing, and distance is, which is the core of all martial art. I don't think he will be a threat, as I know you have better basic requirements. Here, this is the important part. He says, my mind is made up to start a system of my own. So this is February of 1965. I mean a system of totality, embracing all, but yet guided with simplicity. It will concentrate on the root of things, rhythm, timing, distance, and embrace the 5 ways of attack. This is by far the most effective method I've ever encountered or will encounter. All right, so again, a glimpse. It shows it shows Bruce Lee starting to do things as a martial arts businessman, right? He's encouraging Taki Kimura to promote Kung Fu in Seattle, to continue to promote Kung Fu in Seattle. He's advising him on how to deal with competition. And now he's also thinking of creating his own fighting method, right? In this same section are personal letters to Linda Lee about taking care of herself and the newborn Brandon, about his family life in Hong Kong, because I guess he had returned to Hong Kong for his dad's funeral, I think, right? But these letters again show that Bruce Lee was very, very concerned about the well-being of his family. Within 2 months of mailing letters from Kowloon to Seattle, Bruce Lee is back in Hong Kong, this time with Linda, and writing to Taki Kimura, James Lee, and others. He says in this letter, I'll be here until 20th Century Fox notifies me to return for the actual shooting, which will be another 2 more months, I think. Although a contract has been proposed, the whole deal is not 100%. However, it is 70% that it will succeed. At least that's what my agent told me. In the meantime, I've been teaching my brothers and some friends Kung Fu at my house. They are very enthused over the whole deal. I too am working on my transformation of simplicity to yet another more free-flowing movement of no limitation, right? He mentions here Masoyama's book, This is Karate, which I guess came out at the same time. And he says that as for the actual application of techniques, it is still too far behind. And he, Oyama, admits that Kung Fu's theory is sounder and more practical. They talk a little bit about the Clay Liston fight. And then, I find this interesting. He says, by the way, if there's any dues, I'll appreciate it if you can send them to me. Also, do report on the class progress as well as yours and Charles's, right? So Bruce Lee appears to be very happy about his Hollywood prospects and seems to be doing what he can from long distance to continue to teach Taki Kimura. And again, there's a small concern about financial matters. The other one, more stuff about the Clay and Liston fight. So I guess in June of '65, Bruce Lee was heavy into the observation of boxing. He says, I'll find out about the wooden dummy the first chance I get. I think the dummy will help you in sharpening your skill. But then he says, talking about my method, my style has now been formed, but I'll have to see you personally to explain it. The idea can be summed up as this: just as it is difficult to come in on an opponent with no baizhong, thus no guided lines or boundary, it is more difficult to find the solution for a method with no exact style or method, yet governed by an immovable first principle. Timing and distance are the basic stuffs, but Wing Chun principle is the nucleus, the more important foundation. So still an emphasis on the Wing Chun element, even with this new method, which he says, I have to show it to you in person. A couple of letters here to James Lee. It was, what was it? Oh, before I go on to show you the counteroffensive of the techniques you ask, I'll go on with this letter, and then I'll use another letter for the illustration of Silam Dao, right? Here are some counters for that technique. So what I find very cool about this is that in both letters to Taki Kimura and to James Lee, Bruce Lee is able to draw characters and show them stuff. You know, I mean, just like it's incredible. I could never do this. I mean, because I'd have to do like stick figures, and that would not work at all. So I would have to be the first part when he said to Taki Kimura that he'd have to see him in person. Yeah, well, no, I could shoot video. I just thought of that, right? Anyhow, I just find that this is pretty remarkable, right? Okay, so moving along. He does, in a second letter to James Lee, he says, in my formation of a more complete Wing Chun, which is interesting, right? I've added on an indirect progressive attack to the original Chi Sao, which is close quarter combat. Indirect progressive attack is the link to achieve Chi Sao. Indirect progressive attack is used against an opponent whose self-defense is tight and fast enough to deal with simple attacks like straight blast, finger jab, and trapping hit. Indirect progressive attack, IPA from now on, is based on feinting, and feinting is to draw the opponent to the execution of a parry or block, right? So again, very, very detailed breakdown, very detailed analysis. What's interesting is that in this letter, which I think is maybe about 3 months after the Taki Kimura letter, he says, I'm having a Gung Fu system drawn up. This system is a combination of chiefly Wing Chun, fencing, and boxing. As for training, I have other ways of training. I'll have them written down when it is finished. Boy, it will be it. Right, that famous quotation. Then there's another extensive one, but this one didn't have drawings, but it's the following is a suggested Kung Fu training program for the class instruction. Talks about limbering exercises, waist training, leg training, shoulder, arm training, mainly push-up or any basic weight training you think is beneficial, and then wrist training, rotating and flexing or with weight. And then he says to James Lee, use your own ideas based on creating new ways to improve the function of the body in Kung Fu. To hell with conventional methods and opinions, right? Then he talks about punching using the paper target, the heavy bag and that stuff, and then kicking stuff or whatever, right? He says, make use of the wooden dummy and equipment available at our Shaolin Temple gym. It will be a challenge to you to create ways and means to better the training method. Use karate, judo, aikido, or any style to build your counter-offensive from. It will be interesting. I agree. All right. Again, what I find amazing is these letters, it's the amount of material that Bruce Lee is teaching with the use of pen and paper, right? I think that shows a high degree of dedication to transmitting knowledge to his students by any means necessary. Again, in this, there are a few other letters to James Lee, again with hand-drawn details about techniques, and then there are some of the famous letters to George Lee about equipment design. I knew we weren't going to have time to go through everything. There's so much good stuff. Actually, I was going to say this in the closing, but if you have not read this book, then you're wasting time. You really do have to get your hands on this. For those of you who are pecuniarily challenged, I bet you there's a PDF of it somewhere online. All right. This one is to, we're almost done, guys. This one is to Fred Sato in Seattle. And it says it might be a surprise, but instead of writing you from Hong Kong, I'm writing from Los Angeles. This is 1966, April 1966. It says, you see, Batman is such a hit, though I kind of think it's silly, that the Green Hornet is sold without a pilot and script. In other words, the series will definitely be coming out this season, which is this coming September. At present, 20th Century Fox is sending me to drama school. The drama coach is Jeff Corey, the best here in Hollywood, at $70 an hour. And then he makes a joke. He says, but if I was paying the $70 an hour, I would already have told him that I got acting down, right? The lessons 3 times a week are doing me a lot of good and are making me more fluid with not acting, a most difficult way to achieve unnatural naturalness. So I guess 4 years later, when he was interviewed by Pierre Berton, he was still talking this way. At any rate, we are to start shooting on the 23rd of May. I'll be playing Kato. Doesn't sound like a Chinaman, does it? The right-hand man of the Green Hornet. Instead of carrying all kinds of weapons, this fellow is to gung fu all his opponents. At present, besides taking acting lessons, I'm giving private lessons in gung fu. Actually, will start the end of this month. Among my prospective students are Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, Vic Damone, Tommy Sands. That was to Fred Sato in Seattle, and then to Taki Kimura. He says, if I didn't tell you, the date has been set for the shooting, though as of now there isn't a Green Hornet. It'll be on the 23rd of next month. I didn't see that when I was previewing these. Maybe he means that the Green Hornet character hadn't been cast, right? Anyhow, he says this is fun. By the way, I'll be moving to another really cool apartment, the Barrington Plaza, a 27 stories high luxury tower with doorman and attendant parking, laundry and dry cleaning valet service, Olympic-sized pool, all wool carpeting, all electric kitchen, dishwasher, built-in range and oven, etc. Electronic huge elevators. I'll be living on the 23rd story. The higher, the more expensive. And I'm telling you, it's something else. Right? I love that, right? He says they claim you can live a year inside the place without having to go out and buy anything, right? But then, check this, he says, so much for that. This is the same letter. So he details all this stuff. I left some of it out. And then he goes, so much for that. I'm glad to hear that the boys are loyal to the school. So back to martial art, right? I think Chris should be promoted to third. His loyalty certainly demands attention, but his laziness and lack of drive is something else. Well, I'll leave this matter in your hands, and you will have to judge and see what fits. You are the head instructor in charge, and you will decide on him, on the rest of the boys, in fact. You have the authority to give out rank, you know. By the way, you are the only one that can do so. So let me know what your decision is, and if there's any membership card that needs to be stamped by my seal, just tell the student to send them to you, and you mail them to me. Then he does say to Kimura, you have something over that other martial artist you mentioned. That is not being classically inclined and the ability to express yourself explosively and economically. The more I observe the prevalent karate men here in the West, the more I'm amazed at the public that ignorantly eats up such an impractical mess without at least analyzing karate with their own more alive and certainly more practical sport of boxing. Pretty cool, right? Says throwaway mysticism and BS is really nothing but a blind devotion to the systematic uselessness of practicing routines and stunts that lead nowhere, right? So this one is another pretty long one involved in breaking down ideas of Kung Fu training. Then he starts to close it out. He says, I've been busy like hell with acting lessons and Kung Fu lessons. This is interesting. The same stuff I teach in the group class, right? So he's referring to private lessons, that it's the same stuff that he teaches in the group class, nothing spectacular. And tonight I'm invited to attend an Academy Award dinner in Hollywood, right? If you want to excel in Kung Fu, you have to throw away all classical junk and face combat in its suchness, which is simple and direct, right? 2 letters to 2 old friends to whom Bruce Lee appears to be sharing his excitement at his improved level of living in Hollywood. And I think you can hear from his words that he's really enjoying the trappings of the Hollywood lifestyle. But then I love how he abruptly drops that line of conversations and returns to the more important topic of Kung Fu. Next one is to William Dozier. I forget his position, but he's a Hollywood producer. And essentially, in this letter, he says, since the first episode of the Green Hornet, I've gained actual experience. I've learned to be simply human without unnecessary striving. I believe in Cato, and I'm truthfully justifying the physical action economically. Actually, what I would like to express here is regarding the relationship between the Green Hornet and Cato. True that Cato is a houseboy of Brit, but as the crime fighter, Cato is an active partner of the Green Hornet and not a mute follower. Jeff Corey, who is the acting coach, agrees, and I myself feel that at least an occasional dialogue would certainly make me feel more at home with the fellow players. It does take a real pro to just stand there in big close-ups. I've learned the effectiveness of simplicity, but in order to cultivate simplicity, something to say or do is necessary. From firmness comes gentleness, and complexity leads to simplicity. So he says, I'm not complaining, but I feel that an active partnership with the Green Hornet will definitely bring out a more effective and efficient Cato. My aim is for the betterment of the show, and I bother you with this because you have been most understanding. Wow, right? The stones on Bruce Lee, right? Here he respectfully letting the producer know that if given more to do as Cato, he is confident that he can bring more to the character and bring more to the show. I think this is a guy who is confident in his ability to bring dynamism to the screen. Sounds to me like someone who is destined to be a star. Okay, wow, we've been on for 32 minutes. Part 3 is 1967 to 1970 and is titled Jeet Kune Do and the Art of Cultivating Optimism. It opens up with a series of letters to George Lee about the different designs. Like I said, you know, the world famous 3 stages of cultivation and the famous tombstone. Then there's this great letter to Taki Kimura about teaching methods, but we're going really long. So let me just scan it for a second. Okay, so first and foremost, I'd like to impress the most important rule of teaching in your mind, and that is the economy of form. Follow this rule, and you will never feel like you have to add more and more so-called sizzling techniques to keep our students interested. He goes into detail explaining the economy of form, but let me see if I can just find you a part. He says, here's an example. Each student must attack from the Baizhong without any wasted motion. Now, this has been an overlooked basic theory of utmost importance. If any student does his paksao or any technique for that matter with wasted motion, back to the touch in hand position he goes to minimize his unnecessary motions. So you see that in order to progress, to apply paksao from a distance, this touch in hand position has to be mastered. Not only that, the student has to return to the touch in hand position to remind him to eliminate unnecessary motion periodically, right? So he says, you know, if you follow that suggestion of returning to the nucleus, if the student is engaged in too much wasted motion, he says the repetition is what sets in for perfection. He says to begin to work on that and apply all you've learned with economy of motion, you will double your speed and your skill doing just that. And I hope I have impressed in your mind a most important rule of our style. Bruce Lee apparently had worked out a method to coin a phrase that I first heard in martial art business, to disguise the repetition by returning students to the reference point position if they used any kind of wasted motion, right? It's funny because we've heard it said that Bruce Lee hated to teach the big groups of students, but it certainly seems like at this point he had all the tools to be an excellent group class instructor, right? Anyhow, So we moved to 1969, and this letter is to his Wing Chun senior, William Chung. And I'll just read you the relevant part. It says, during the last 10 years, Chinese martial art has always been a major part of my activity, though I am now in a new field, the field of acting. My achievement in the martial art is most satisfying, and the word Chinese has come a long way in the circle of martial art due to the fact that all three of the US Karate freestyle champs are studied under me. Then he says, William, I've lost faith in the Chinese classical arts, though I still call mine Chinese, because basically all styles are products of land swimming, even the Wing Chun school. So my line of training is more toward efficient street fighting with everything goes, wearing headgear, gloves, chest guards, shin guards. You guys have seen this, right? You know, it's Bruce Lee letting William Chung know that he has named his new style, his new art, Jeet Kune Do. And the reason for not sticking to Wing Chun is because he says Jeet Kune Do has more to offer regarding efficiency, right? And then he says, I mention all of the above because it is a major event in my life and I'd like to fill you in with it. I mean, of course, he's talking to one of his Wing Chun seniors, right? Somebody who trained him in the Hong Kong days. And so, you know, as any dutiful junior, right? He thinks it necessary to catch him up with what's going on, right? One thing that I would like to know, and if anybody out there knows anything about it, I wonder what William Chung's reaction to Bruce Lee telling him about the creation of Jeet Kune Do. I wonder what his William Chung's reaction might have been. Anyhow, right? So more letters are sent out to George Lee as usual about fantastic pieces of equipment. But then there are also several to Jun Rhee. If you guys don't know Jun Rhee, he is considered the father of American Taekwondo. And I have always found Bruce Lee's relationship with Jun Rhee to be quite interesting because Jun Rhee was one of the first in American martial art to build a martial arts empire, right? So I've always wondered how come something similar didn't happen with Jeet Kune Do, right? So there's this one letter that reveals that Bruce Lee really helped Jun Rhee to get onto the pages of Black Belt magazine. He says, had lunch with Mito, that's Mito Uehara, who is the publisher, O'Hara Publications, the publisher of Black Belt and Karate Illustrated. At a glance, I can see you are mentioned in both upcoming Black Belt 19 and the new Karate Illustrated magazine. A picture of you awarding the belt to Skipper Mullins. The Nationals has good pictorial coverage, and I think letters to the editor mentions your branch in Dominican Republic. So all in all, good coverage, especially the Nationals. Also, I talked to Mito about your book. I told him it will be quality, and he definitely likes to look over it. Well, I've bridged the gap. The rest is up to you. Pretty cool, right? But Jun Rhee was not the only person that Bruce Lee tried to help out with Black Belt magazine. There's a letter to Siu Hun San, right, who is another Kung Fu senior of Bruce Lee's back in Hong Kong. It says, Uncle Siu, I have mentioned you and your Chinese pugilistic teaching in Hong Kong to Black Belt magazine. It is the greatest Kung Fu magazine in America. It reports on martial arts of the whole world, including karate, hapkido, judo, and so on. Internationally known teachers always appear in it. If you are interested, you can write a short history of martial arts and your philosophy of boxing and send it to me together with photographs. I can translate them into English. With publicity in Black Belt magazine, it may be of some help when you come to America. I've recommended you to Black Belt magazine, so they want to write a biography about you. If you are interested, you can send me your photographs and your articles to Black Belt magazine and care me, blah, 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 right? So Bruce Lee being magnanimous and helping where he can people to get their foot in the door at the offices of Black Belt magazine, and apparently for Uncle Siu to give him a leg up since he was appeared to be moving to America. In 1970, there's not necessarily a contrasting letter, but this is a letter to Wong Chun Long. Uh, Again, a Wing Chun senior from Hong Kong, somebody who was responsible for training Bruce Lee. And so he says, it's been a long time since I last wrote to you. And then he catches him up. He tells him he's bought a house in Bel Air, or whatever, right? Then he says, I've organized a film production company. I've also written a story, The Silent Flute. James Coburn and I will act in it. Sterling Silliphant is a screenplay writer. He's a famous guy, having written In the Heat of the Night. We plan to make the first martial arts film in Hollywood. The prospect is good. About 6 months from now, filming will start. And then he does the typical thing, I guess, switches to martial art. As to martial art, I still practice daily. I teach my students and friends twice a week. It doesn't matter if they are Western boxers, Taekwondo practitioners, or wrestlers. I will teach them as long as they are friendly and will not get uptight. Since I started to practice realistically in 1966 with the chest protectors and gloves, I feel that I had many prejudices before, and they are wrong. So I changed the name of the gist of my study to Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do is only a name. The most important thing is to avoid having bias in training. Of course, I run every day. I practice my tools, kick, punch, throw, etc. I have to raise the basic conditions daily. Although the principle of boxing is important, practicality is even more important. I thank you and Master Yip Man for teaching me the ways of Wing Chun in Hong Kong. Actually, I have to thank you for leading me to walk on a practical road. Especially in the States, there are Western boxers. I often practice with them too. There are many so-called masters in Wing Chun here. I really hope that they will not be so blind as to fight with those Western boxers, right? To me, it seems like Bruce Lee had no fear in detailing his evolution to Shun Long, possibly because Wong himself was a boxer, from my understanding, and so probably had no problems with Bruce Lee branching out to find his own way. Now, to close up, based on what we've recently been treated to, I present you with excerpts from 2 letters written to Linda Lee while Bruce Lee was off in Europe with in Switzerland with Roman Polanski. All right. When one part it says, they, the few friends of Roman who stay at the same house, are the so-called jet set, and they are stoned practically all the time, and they are kind of silly. Roman, if not skiing, is always after some girls. Luckily, there is one martial art nut here in town, and he will show me around whenever Roman is off. That's in the first one. In the second one, it says, to start off, I want to say I really miss my wife and that I love her. From what I've seen of the people coming in and out of Roman's chalet, my appreciation of you grows. The so-called jet set is really boring to the extent that they all go to extremes. Just keeping company with the whole group going to nightclubs tired me out. Loss of sleep is a common event for me since I'm here. I was stuck at some people's house waiting for Roman to pick me up or wanting to leave but couldn't. To put it short, I'm kind of fed up and want very, very much to be with my family. When I come back, I'll tell you of Gstaad and its rich people. Moving into 1971, there are letters to Linda detailing life, the life of filming in the Big Boss in Thailand. It says, except for rotten hours, day and night shooting, Hong Kong Film Company is nice to work with. Anyway, I feel that if we can, we should pay off the $3,000 on the house payment, preferably for, say, December, because as of now, I feel I can earn some money from Paramount should I return to the States in September. Hong Kong film companies are hot after my work. I only hope we can get the extension. I should return with around $1,500. Hold the $2,000 for Bob and Jim. The Big Boss is shaping up nicely as it moves along. The director is not bad after all, based on Hong Kong standards. I'm telling you, I'm the superstar in Hong Kong with separate makeup, special chair, even separate Kleenex. Yes, I feel strongly that I really can be the biggest ever in Hong Kong. It needs only careful planning in obtaining it. When my pictures make a hit in Hong Kong, I'll start a minimum of 10,000 a picture, 10% interest, first class round trip tickets, and rooming for my full family. Let's hope everything will move along nicely from Bangkok to US, and from US, our whole family goes to Hong Kong for 2.5 months, Christmas and all. Yes, it looks like this year is turned into some nice days ahead. This is 1971, going into 72. You make of it what you will. Finally, 1973. This section is called the final year. There's a letter again to June Rhee. It says, I'm at Mr. Chow's office, and both Mr. Chow and I are waiting for the picture of your student. Mr. Chow has already told his associate to work on the script while I'm very busy working in the Warner Brothers picture, referring to Enter the Dragon. So this might be June Rhee's, what was it called? When Taekwondo Strikes, I think, because that's the only movie that I know that he was in. So would you please then rush me these photos so I can present them to Mr. Chow, along with whatever suggestions you would like to make on this possible project together, right? I am doing fine. No, I should say excellent. You know how it is. It's so damn good that I cannot bear it. Lots of luck, and take care of your knee. A Korean without a good knee is a dead Korean. Warmest personal regards, sincerely yours, right? So Bruce Lee, up to the very end, was still doing what he could to help out good friends like June Rhee, and being an emotional booster to other friends, because to Taki Kimura in May of 1973, he said, in life, there are the pluses and the minuses, and it is time for you to concentrate on the pluses. It might be difficult, but fortunately for us human beings, we have self-will. Well, it's time to employ it. Life is an ever-flowing process, and somewhere on the path, some unpleasant things will pop up. It might leave a scar, but then life is flowing on, and like running water, when it stops, it grows stale. Go bravely on, my friend, because each experience teaches us a lesson. And remember, if there is anything at all I can help with, let me know. Keep blasting, because James Lee did, and life is such that sometimes it is nice and sometimes it is not. Right. So we'll close with these two. One to Ted Ashley, another Hollywood producer, and then to Adrian Marshall, who was Bruce Lee's lawyer. Right. To Ted Ashley, it says, do consider carefully in regard to the title of Enter the Dragon. This unique dragon, the Chinese, the spiritual, etc., is not one of those wonton kung fu flicks from Hong Kong. With the rightful publicity, we can tell on the screen as well as outside that this dragon has broken the all-time record consecutively. Like you said, it comes across. I really think this is a good title, and like I said, do think it over carefully, because Enter the Dragon suggests the emergence, the entrance of someone, a personality that is of quality. There was, oh, I forgot this one. There was also a letter to Run Run Shaw. It says, as of now, consider September, October, and November a period of 3 months reserved for Shaw. Specific terms we will discuss upon my arrival. And then, infamously, there's the letter to Adrian Marshall, which was written on July 20th, 1973, and posted a few hours before Bruce Lee passed away. Due to the distance between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, it says the letter arrived on Marshall's desk a week later. However, I thought readers might be interested in learning what promise the future had for Bruce at this particular period in his life. In the missive, Bruce outlines his various business offers and plans for the future. To everyone's knowledge, this is the last letter Bruce Lee ever wrote. Despite his hard-won success, Lee's primary concern was always a full commitment to quality, which explains why his films have withstood the test of time and become classics of the genre. And pretty much it says, we'll be arriving in Los Angeles on August 3rd. Would like to sit down and hope you can leave open the weekend of August 4th to 5th to discuss the following. The deal with Hanna-Barbera, who, if I remember correctly, they were like a cartoon outfit. Warner's proposition, and then something called Titana's from Italy, and then Andy's proposition from Hong Kong, which I will explain to you when I see you in person. All in all, it will be a hectic schedule with television shows, United Press interview, etc. Spending 1 week in LA and leaving on August 18th to New York for another week of publicity, maybe the Johnny Carson show, and so forth. And then my publicity tour will officially end on August 24th, and on August 25th, I will meet Linda at LA, ready to come back to Hong Kong, hopefully in one piece. In the meantime, if there's any preliminary discussion that you can start without my presence, go right ahead. However, I would prefer you and I sit down first and discuss the whole plan of the income tax situation before we proceed on. Also, I would like to meet with you first before meeting with Raymond Chow, and then both of us will hear him out. By the way, there are also other propositions of books, closing, endorsements, etc. At any rate, I will talk to you personally when I see you. Take care, my friend. Very truly yours, Bruce. P.S. Looking forward to a sincere, open, and honest relationship between you and I to really do something fair and square. By the way, Cy Wentrob had just called and will be flying here to Hong Kong, supposedly to have devised a super plan for me. At any rate, I won't sign anything until I and then maybe Raymond and or Cy sit down and we all have talked. So get prepared. See you soon. Okay, so what I have done today, this is not to defend Bruce Lee in any way for any supposed transgressions. As I've said before, this page is I love Jeet Kune Do, not I worship Bruce Lee. Now, obviously, the two, Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, are inextricably intertwined, but I just ask that you keep in mind that Bruce Lee saw himself as a vehicle clearing a path which others could follow to make their own journeys, right? And that's it. And again, if you never have, I suggest get your hands on this. Like I said, I'm sure there's a PDF online, and read it. It'll definitely do a lot to dispel the effect of the recent revelations, right? So what say you? Do you think, well, do you think I did a good job, right, in spending 55 minutes of your time on this thing? Please let me know what you think in the comments below. And that's all I got to say about this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. On Friday, July 16th at 6 p.m., Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode with John Graydon of Martial Arts Teachers Association and Empower Kickboxing. That's Friday at 6 p.m. Today is a purple day. There you go. All right. So I'll see some of you hopefully on Friday with Mr. Graydon. If not, I'll see you next Wednesday for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Talk soon.